Hello, viewers. It's yet another episode of the Youth Roundtable, and I welcome you officially. Today, we shall have a conversation around a topic that affects the most ordinary Ugandan, if you like to call them the wananchi. And the issue is around the prices of commodities, which have ever since not stopped skyrocketing. But also a new issue that emerged as of last week, the coffee deal that Uganda entered into with a given company X that we shall have a conversation around today. And we are here to evaluate that, is this Uganda's economic policy regarding, for example, that can government intervene in terms of setting price ceilings or in terms of regulating the private players, or is it because our economy is liberal and the forces of demand and supply take charge? But well, to understand this and much more, I'm joined by a panel of distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Of course, the Youth Roundtable looks out for cream of the cream, and I shall introduce today's cream right away. From my extreme right is a second, yes, he's appearing here for the second time. He's by the name Gerald Oyeki. Gerald Oyeki is the Secretary for Mobilization of the National Unity Platform, but his area of jurisdiction is Northern Uganda. Gerald, you're most welcome to the show once again.
Thank you, Moses.
Yes.
It always feels nice appearing on Civic Space TV.
Yeah.
I wish I would always be a host daily.
Yeah, you have to be a regular panelist.
A regular panelist. Yes.
Well, we shall see about that.
Sure, yeah.
But many thanks for joining us, and
Yeah,
you're
sure.
welcome.
Pleasure. Yeah.
Next to Gerard is a friend of mine by the name Siyema Atukundah. Siyema is the Secretary for Female Affairs of the Mubende District Youth Council. She is also the Assistant General Secretary of UNSA and also an entrepreneur, CEO of Yema Quality Products.
Definitely.
Siyema, you're welcome.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Happy to be here for the first time. Yeah.
Do you want to say hello to our viewers?
Hello, our viewers. Happy to be here on this panel today. I've always wanted. And yes, I appreciate the youth minds, always on the Youth Roundtable. It is really very nice to be here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We're also happy to have you for the first time. Next to Siyema is Comrade Kakai Nimrod. Nimrod is a Pan-Africanist. He is equally a youth and environmental advocate. I also know that he's a former NRM flag bearer of the Makerere University Business School Guild presidential race. Nimrod, you're most welcome.
Thank you so much, Comrade Kidega. I'm so happy, but this is my maiden appearance on Civic Space. I'm very excited to be here with this dealer cream of young people from other parties.
Yeah.
But I'm very happy to be here. What he didn't add on, I come from Namisindwa district. That's the eastern part of this country, Bugis sub-region.
Ah.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here today.
Very interesting. So I'm sure you have interest around the coffee deal.
Very much, because I'm a son of a peasant and I'm here because of coffee.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, fair enough. Next to Comrade Nimrod and next to myself is Joyce Adikini. Joyce is a graduate of the Program for Young Politicians in Africa. She is also a youth activist with the Forum for Democratic Change. I know that she's also a software engineer by training from Makerere University. But she has interest around, how best can our country be properly governed.
Causing
Joyce,
problems.
yeah?
Causing problems.
Joyce, you're most welcome, and our viewers would love to listen to your voice.
Yes, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much, Comrade Kidega, for hosting us today. I'm so happy to be here together with my fellow young people, and I know it is going to be a very fruitful discussion. The topics today are quite pertinent to us, the young generation.
Yeah, thank you very much, panelists, for that very amazing introduction that you just did. And without wasting more time, let us begin right away. And I'll begin with you, Comrade Kakai.
Thank you.
That between 1933 and 1945, when the world was experienced a very sharp contradiction between the ideas of either communism or capitalism, one of the very strong advocates of capitalism came out and said that the biggest form of democracy is actually liberalizing the economy. And I believe the world has ever since gradually taken that approach that let us liberalize the economy, let the forces of demand and supply take charge. Government should have very limited intervention in terms of regulating and setting, prices. So, and the issue today in Uganda is the issue around the high prices of commodities. And it looks like government has not done so much to either set price ceilings or to set, price benchmarks. So the issue is that what exactly is happening? Why are prices of commodities continuously rising, even when government says that they've tried to negotiate with these private players, but the prices still seem to continue going high? What is happening in your own view?
Thank you so much, Moses. As a young Ugandan, as another citizen of this country, I accept the challenge that our prices have increased in this country for the last 2 months, and they're still increasing. But when we talk about issues of prices increasing like this, I think we should be honest enough to address why are they increasing. Prices are increasing, in my own opinion, because of two major factors. We have external factors and also internal factors. I will start talking about external factors. Prices to increase, actually, in economics, prices are dependent variables. They depend on other factors. They're not alone. And here we look at supply chain of commodities around the world. And when you look at the global markets, prices have changed because of a number of factors. Let's just give a look at the effect of COVID-19. COVID-19, when it hit the world, there was fear among entrepreneurs, among producers, that the demand was less. And realized that a number of producers actually stopped production. After stopping production, there have been a gradual relief in the world, and demands have started increasing. And that's why it's seen that in the last 2 months, there's a difference because the demand, the economy has been opened in different countries, and the demand has definitely increased. Now, these producers are also just trying to cope up with demand. And we understand that in matters of an open economy, prices are determined by the forces of demand and supply. When the demand is high, definitely supply is affected. And because the supply is low, the demand is high. And what will a producer do who is well stationed? He will increase prices so that the highest bidder takes it. Now that is one. Two, when we look at the challenges, the geopolitics, for example, the escalating Russia-Ukraine war. Russia is the second highest producer of oils in the world. And oil contributes around 60% in terms of production of commodities. And you realize that because of sanctions that are placed on Russia, and because Russia also wants to position themselves, there's a poor supply chain of oils in the world. In the last 2 months, a barrel of oil was $80. Today, as we speak, it has increased to $100. And when it increased to $100, even though which country will get affected, that's why even there's issues in Kenya. Scarcity of oil, scarcity of petroleum, scarcity of diesel, all this. And they use these factors in terms of production, transportation of goods, facility machines in terms of production. So you realize that prices externally, to me, I'll put them on two issues, COVID-19 and geopolitics. But then when you come to internal, in Uganda today, Uganda being that most of citizens are they participate in subsistence agriculture. That's why we are not crying that there is increase in price of maize today. We're all saying soap, cement. And when you look at these prices, one, when COVID hit Uganda, there's an issue that also the demand reduced. Two, I also put it on the introduction of stamp duties and e-tax systems that was introduced.
But for how long are you going to blame COVID-19? Shouldn't we know better by now that we should have maybe anticipated such economic recession crisis, and then therefore we should have planned better?
Yes, smart economists in the world, they anticipated this. And when you go to middle-income countries, they had oil reserves that sustained the economies. In Uganda today, our oil reserves have nothing. If they have, they cannot sustain for 1 week.
So comrade, no one anticipated this.
No, in Uganda, of course, I agree that maybe our smart economy is anticipated, but there is implementation.
Okay.
We can anticipate, but there is no implementation.
Okay, fair enough. Let me just bring in Comrade Siyema.
Yes.
She has really showed interest of coming in, so
it's okay.
let me just bring her in right away.
It's okay.
Siyema, you are a CEO of a company, and by all means, you produce commodities. My first question to you is that have you also increased as Siyema, as Sema, Yema rather, as Yema quality products, have you increased prices of your commodities? And if so, why? Or if you haven't, still why?
Thank you. As you've said, I'm a CEO of Yema Quality Products, and I deal in production of cleaning detergents and mainly now liquid soap. Liquid soap serves as a detergent. Okay. So I've not increased so much. I've slightly increased my prices because my chemicals that I use in the production have also been increased. Okay. But then you realize that the chemicals are increasing in a way. Today you buy a certain raw material at, let's say, 10,000, and then tomorrow morning you find it at maybe 11,000, and the next morning. So the increase in prices is sometimes we think maybe these suppliers are just choosing to do that, though we acknowledge the fact that they tell us, fuel prices are very high. The Russia-Ukraine war affected our raw materials that come into Uganda, because these suppliers say they get these materials from Kenya. Others say the transportation or the supply of these raw materials to them is also very low. So that's why they keep on changing their prices over time. Yeah. So you find that we as maybe the customers are not protected. Maybe we say that the government should have protected us. We have the consumer protection law, and this is strictly to protect us
from exploitation,
from bad practices in business, like over heightening prices over and over all the time. You find today maybe I made a production of liquid soap, and the prices or the cost of production was anticipated. Okay, the selling price was anticipated at a certain cost of production, and then tomorrow, as I'm selling my liquid soap to another person, you find the production cost that I should have used when I'm setting a certain price for tomorrow is different. So businesses are not stable now. Personally, it is affecting me in my company that I cannot, my prices, I don't want to to impose a very big burden on my customers. On the consumers. But still, I'm forced to do that because I'm also not protected. Yeah. By the government, maybe from the suppliers' exploitation.
Yeah. Thank you.
Allow me to just jump in on that a little.
Okay.
You see, we cannot discuss the economy of Uganda in exclusion of the region. Okay. Just last week alone, the price of gasoline in Kenya jumped up 7.3%. But that is to about $1.25 per barrel. That is gas per liter of gasoline. But the government took in radical measures, steps. First, deporting the Ruby CEO, local Bagaran, back to Italy. And as we speak now, about 10 CEOs of oil companies in Kenya face jail of up to 2 years. Okay. And what is the reason? One is the first component is hoarding oil. That's one. But then two, failing to meet the minimum local supply regulation. That if there's a shortage, you must at least be able to keep a minimum supply of oil that can last at least 25 days, okay, to cushion just in case there's a shortage. So I think when you start discussing the Russia-Ukraine war, is far-fetched. It's a question of a government or a state protecting its population against, that is in case such a shock comes up anyway, against such shockers. Now, when these steps are taken, the prices actually stabilize in Kenya. So that goes to show you the interplay and also the cartels in the oil industry, in our local production processes. If our oil therefore comes from Kenya, and their prices have been maintained and they are stable, and we are saying that the cost of transporting this oil has not been altered as well, okay? So where do we then bring in the concept of, okay, the global oil prices have increased and therefore there's an instantaneous increase therefore in our oil prices? But then even in his defense, the CEO, that is Bergerson, claimed that in February, the reason as to why the prices have increased is because of increase in demand, which has affected supply. But then, how do you then explain, you know, a sudden stabilization of that price when the political actors come in to take to take action, you know,
so
towards
meaning,
the prices?
in other words, all you're saying is that our government has been complacent.
Yes, I think
taking, you know, decisive measures on how to deal with this prices.
There's complacency. I also think with the interplay of what's going on around the country right now in regards to the coffee deals and all that, I think there's just a reluctance to protect the population against such shockers, I should
Gerald,
say.
fair enough, and I think I'll ask the same question to Joyce, but let's just first explore it with you.
Yeah.
Because now that your argument puts an indictment on the government.
Yes.
You know, they aren't doing enough.
Yes.
You know, they aren't, you know, putting themselves out there to actually regulate these prices deliberately.
Yes.
But couldn't you say that this is only as a result of us liberalizing the economy? That let's leave demand and supply to take their course, and government should have limited intervention as much as possible, very limited, you know, towards maybe setting price ceilings and even setting prices themselves.
You see, we must also be alive to the economic realities, Moses, that it is the role of every government. That's why in the US you have minimum wage.
Yes.
It's a very liberal economy, you know, capitalistic. You decide what you want to trade in. But there are bare minimums protect the population, okay?
Yeah.
That these are citizens of my country. If prices go beyond this, won't we have the poverty rates increase, the poverty levels? As a country, would you want the poverty statistics of your country to go higher, or you want to actually keep reducing the statistics? If you have not been able to increase the bargaining power, the purchasing power of your citizens, so then you must be able to protect the consumer against such shockers. So I think even in liberal economies, it is important that the local consumer is actually cushioned from exploitation. Okay, yes, thank you.
Yeah, sure, fair enough. And Joyce, let me come to you. Uganda is, I would say, a quasi-capitalistic economy, okay? Where, yes, because currently the head of state or president was a close ally to Mwalimu Julius Nyerere, who was a socialist, if I'm to say. So I think that whereas the world is forcing us to move towards capitalism, I think there's still certain tendencies of communism within our country where, you know, more so in the rural areas. But the issue today is that the private sector, the private players literally are dominating even the social services. You go to education, the biggest education institutions are actually moving towards the private sector. You go to the medical sector, they are more towards the private sector. So is this a shift? Is government giving away its responsibility to the private sector? Or is this an inevitable happening that the private players are going to take charge of world economy, and government by all means is going to just get gradually pushed away from, you know, taking active role both in domestic but also in international, you know, economies? And therefore this explains the current situation that we are facing here in Uganda.
Thank you very much. I appreciate all the views that my colleagues have already aired on this show. And if I may go straight to the role of government, which is the question that you've ended with. In my observation, the Ugandan government has stripped itself of the duties of taking care of citizens. We are having a fully capitalistic economy, but where they have interest, they again come up to put regulations and caveats to shield a few private entities. According to the way the government is behaving, they have left the population to fend for themselves. They have left the population to hustle with the demand and supply debate. They have left the population and the private businessman to exploit the population as much as it can, and all they're focused on is taxing. So government has given itself only the mandate of taxing the economy and not protecting the citizens. Because even when the prices are increasing, all that government comes to do is increase the tax. That is how ridiculous the Ugandan government is. That the price of fuel is increasing, and all you're doing is adding an extra tax on fuel. But you don't even have a fuel reserve to come and subsidize the prices. That the price of soap is increasing, and all you're doing is increasing tax on soap. That the price of sugar is increasing, and all you're doing is increasing the tax on soap. That the price of transport is increasing, and all you're doing is putting more regulations and tax on the transport sector. So what does that mean? That government does not think taking care of the population is part of its duties. For them, they are there to collect taxes and allocate the money to the sectors where they have interest. Now, when I come back to the increase of prices in general, the prices have not started increasing today. About 10 years ago, the price of sugar, for example, was around 2,000 shillings. Today it is 4,000, but that 4,000 has been there since around 2015. It keeps around that amount. The price of salt used to be, at some point, it was 200 shillings. Then it went up to between 700 to 1,000 shillings before COVID-19. So the price increase has been a gradual thing, and every time it increases, first it starts like a COVID-19 trigger. So a certain event in the country or in the world happens, and then the traders increase the price. Then before we know it, it is now normal. The population is comfortable with it, and we've moved on. So even the COVID-19 situation, I can assure you, if we continue like this, in 10 years to come, it will be normal without COVID-19, and we shall be comfortable with the current prices as they are. So I do not want so much to pin COVID-19. There is a lot that we have to do as citizens of this world in regards to price increase. Number one, regulation, like my colleagues have already put up. We need to be honest, to understand what exactly happens in production, so that we regulate the prices of all commodities at all times. Because every time, if it increases, I see every country has an inflation rate. Sometimes they put it at 5%, 3%. But just imagine the prices increase by 5% per annum. In 10 years, what kind of prices will you have? Is your economy also growing at that rate? Because if the price is going to increase by 5% per annum, like the way our bank has set in Uganda, is my income going to increase by 5% per annum? Is the income of that peasant in the village going to be increasing by 5% per annum? If not, then they will not be able to sustain themselves in that kind of economy. So every time we set such targets in regards to inflation, we need to also do the relevant things to make sure that the income of the consumers increase by that rate or even beyond. And when I now come back to COVID-19 in particular and the Ukraine war that my comrade here from I think is representing the Ministry of Finance and Government. So when I come back to that and look at the commodities
Actually, was my lecturer, Ramadan Gobi.
So you are fully representing him?
No, I'm not representing, but I know what exactly he's talking about is true.
Okay, so looking at the commodities, I read the communication from the Ministry of Finance explaining to us why prices have increased and how they don't have much to do about it. And some of the commodities they highlighted was things like sunflower, corn, palm oil, soybeans, and so on and so forth. Then I thought to myself, like, COVID-19 started in 2019. Every sober person in this world knew that it was going to cause economic war, economic trouble. How did we prepare? We immediately COVID-19 came, we started passing supplementary budgets, and we were asking questions. How are we preparing ourselves for the post-COVID-19 era? And it looked political. Every time you ask that question, you are accused of being a politician. And if being a politician
means
asking such questions, then it is good enough. The question, the thing is, what did we do about it? The money was put in military. The money was put in pseudo accounts to do things that have not been done, like constructing the hospital. A ridiculous amount of money was given to a certain company to go and construct a hospital in Luvoa here to prepare for COVID-19. It never happened. 2 years later, we are shocked that COVID-19 has caused inflation, something that was foreseen by everybody in the world. Why didn't we put such investment in agriculture, in the production of soybeans, in the production of corn, in the production of sunflower? And you're talking about the Ukraine war. I read the document saying that Ukraine has been one of the largest exporters of sunflower, palm oil, and soybeans. And we are saying the pearl of Africa is the basket of the world. Okay, so we have been importing sunflower, palm oil, soybeans from Ukraine and Russia, including oil as well, fuel. Isn't that ridiculous?
Yeah,
that even the IMF has given us $1 billion to help us subsidize the economy, recover from the COVID-19. And government is not showing you where they're investing it to mitigate some of these factors. Like you're importing everything. I want that particular commodity that we now have stranded in our country because we were exporting it to Russia and Ukraine, but now because the road is closed, we are stranded with it. Just one.
Sure, fair enough. And I hope that this conversation will explore some of those questions. Okay.
Yes, sure.
And Nimrod, let me come to you.
Yes.
Truth be told, the one thing we cannot run away from is the role of government.
Yes.
Okay. I'll take you back to around 1920 in the USA, where Alexander Hamilton, by then he was Secretary of State, introduced what they called the Smoot-Hawley tariff.
Yes.
And the idea was that how can we protect the domestic investors, okay? Yes. How can we reduce and subsidize the taxes that we levy on domestic investors, whereas at the same time levying high taxes more so on agricultural commodities coming in from the international market. And the idea really went ahead to grow, and that's why today we celebrate the Wall Street companies of America. So it means that government, by all means, has a role to play. We cannot run away from that. Yes. Today, the country has no governor, Bank of Uganda. Yes. So maybe the regulations that our comrades are asking for can't actually be implemented because you have no one who is heading the fiscal area. Okay?
Yes.
Then you have the Minister of Finance openly saying that, now what do you want me to do? I don't know how you feel about this.
Yes.
But I think something needs to be done.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Now, you see, when we are discussing issues of prices, I think we should be honest enough. For a minister to come out and say, what do you want me to do? We should first find out. You see, I've listened to all comrades here addressing the cause. But let's be honest enough. Does our government, can it manage to intervene in the real cause? For example, if issues of oil are on as a global challenge, can Uganda intervene in that?
Do we have oil reserves?
If issues of prices are affected by the war in Ukraine, can Uganda manage to intervene in that? Now, let me bring it closer. Let me just bring it closer.
Yes, he said
he's a far-fetched. He said it's a far-fetched.
He just explained to you how our neighbor in Kenya.
I'm going to talk about it in Kenya. He's saying that Ukraine is a far-fetched argument and all that. In Uganda today, when it comes to taxing of oil, when our oil reaches Mombasa, at the coast. The issue is Kenya will tax it to go through Kenya. And Uganda also what? Put it 30% on every liter that comes here.
It has happened since
You
Uganda
get?
started importing oil.
Now the issue is, in economics, there's what we call the economic plan line, whereby if Kenya is taxing, Uganda doesn't tax. And Uganda will tax oil that will pass through Uganda to go to Sudan or Rwanda. Now, for our country, definitely it's not happening. We're also taxing oil that is taxed in Kenya. Here. And that's what the government is saying. Can we have an alternative route of not using the road what?
Have those taxes increased?
To go through the Lake Victoria. I'll get back to you.
Yes, okay.
To get back to the lake, we use the alternative routes. Maybe to reduce on the cost of transportation of these oils that are going through the road.
So Nimrod, if I may ask, who is government asking if we can use
No, actually, they're already working on that. Now, let me getting back to his question. Yes, they said they're now establishing.
That's a good question.
Yes, they're now establishing alternative routes through the lake to ensure that at least they curb on the prices. And that's an intervention of government. Now, getting back to you about investors and all that.
Is that through the EACOP?
Sorry?
No, EACOP is actually within Uganda.
Within Uganda.
Yeah.
Now, getting back to local investors, getting back to your question of how government can come in and intervene. You know, this is an LDC. And when you're talking about an LDC which is liberalized, we need to be honest enough. When you talk about America...
LDC according to who? According to World Bank?
According to World Bank.
So, but you see, standards of living cannot only be defined by the World Bank standards of maybe GDP.
Yes.
You know,
yes.
We should have, I think, our own means of defining our development as a country.
That's very true.
For us to rely on World Bank and IMF standards and parameters, to me, I think that is not
that's
the
very
right
true.
way to go.
Yes, there's the economic reality
and
here.
as a Pan-African, you should actually know better.
Okay.
But
now there is economic reality in this country.
Before you proceed,
protect me.
Allow me to just ask you
I want to make this point clear to the
in
viewers
1954, Uganda's economy was at the same level with Singapore. Okay?
Yes.
These are all free market economies.
Yes.
So when we say that, you see, when you go by the derivatives of what the IMF defines Uganda as, then I think we are conditioning our economy to stay as is and not proceed to grow.
Yes, thank you for the information. Now, just to answer that, you see, when I always listen to Ugandan debating between the economy of Singapore, Hungary, Thailand to Uganda economy of 1960s. But they don't go ahead to talk about what happened in Uganda between 1960 to 1986.
The post-colonial crisis.
They don't talk about, and they also don't talk about what happened in Singapore between that same time. There's economic crisis that happened in this country during the lost decade. We understand that, but we don't talk about that. That this economy reduced to terrible state. But our friends don't want to talk about that. But again, back to the point I was making. An LDC, when you're trying to fight to reach the middle income status, there are things as government. You see, these investors coming here, they are also protected as investors. We are coming to invest in an economy like Uganda, but it should be the prices should be determined by forces of demand and supply. They are protected by law, and for the government to intervene immediately, it's not something that they can just wake up and decide. And that's why the minimum wage bill is still pending, because the president be at a dilemma of, yes, we want to protect our people, but how can we still have investors attracted to come and invest this country? We have not exploited our resources even to half capacity. We still need more investors. The moment you put regulations like price ceilings immediately now, you're going to chase them away. And you know what will happen to this country? The scarcity will come in, and that's terrible for our economy. But what I think the government can do now in such a state is to weigh something that will protect the investors, but also protect
the consumers.
Yeah, in a sense that, you see, I also agree with my sister that IMF already advised this country that actually in our projection, the reason why we're giving you this donation of 1 trillion Ugandan shillings is because we know that as an economy is going to be affected by COVID-19. Now, the issue I would disagree with our government is, where are they investing the 1 trillion? If we are a subsistence economy, and we are saying that we are getting challenges on flour, palm oils, then we could be good enough to go and invest there. Or else, we could subsidize on taxes. For example, Bidco industry which is maybe the biggest producer of soaps in this country, we could say that instead of the local taxes, because of 1 trillion we received as a country, we are giving that excuse.
Yeah, but fair enough. I want to move to Siyema, but also I have a burning concern for Joyce regarding the issue of the IMF loan that we took. I think, to me, it was actually not. I think we shouldn't be complacent about continuously taking loans from the IMF and from Russia. I think eventually there's a price to pay. A price to pay, rather. And I'll come back to you shortly. But Siyema, let me move to you. And I don't know what political party you belong to, but Nimrod here is proudly NRM.
Yeah, proudly.
But then the issue around, because he explained to us and said that now Uganda is trying to find alternative routes of how to move oil, maybe through or oil and other products, maybe through Lake Victoria. But again, we have an East African Federation. If we cannot have a common market, if we cannot have free movement of commodities, then what is this federation about? Because I want to believe that, among other reasons, inter alia, the core concern of an integration is that we must build our economic prowess, and have a common market. But Nimrod is saying that even the road route for transporting some of these products, there's double taxation. And I think, Gerald, you know that Musalia Mudavadi actually has a very good concept around how can we mitigate double taxation. But I don't think it is through avoiding your own neighboring routes. And you're claiming to be a federation. So do you think that the federation is a hoax? And that's my question to you. Do you think it's a hoax? And therefore, in times of economic crisis, the federation cannot help us, and it's now every man on its own, every state on its own. Uganda battle with their issues, Kenya battle with their issues. We shall think about the federation afterwards.
Then the federation will not have been mentioned anywhere that we have an
East African Federation.
Comrade Nimrod has been talking about the alternatives, the alternative route. But I have to say that we could have those interventions within our federation and see how best we can help each other as countries in this federation and solve such a challenge. But then we should not run away from the immediate solutions that we could do as a country, that we could handle as a country. And before we run out to other countries, we should look at what can we do internally. You can't tell me that you're going to run away from price ceilings.
Should we begin by appointing a governor bank of Uganda?
Definitely, it should be, because I expected this. I expected such points in Parliament. Maybe that maybe one of the challenges as to why we are having prices rising over and over is maybe we don't have a governor. No one is regulating our.
But just to add on, what's the role of a governor? I think that's very, because it may be confusing the two. What's the role of the governor of Uganda?
To supplement on...
I think just fiscal policy entirely. Regulating the fiscal policy.
Without
the foreign exchange. I mean, there is so much role that the mainstream central bank has to play.
Yeah, and that is why
controlling inflation and all that.
And that is why our governor had to stay there for that long, because
to supplement on that,
he was trusted to be the only one who can do it.
I don't think so.
I think to supplement on the concept, of the East African community, I think it is more of a union of convenience. As it stands now, I think the only I can say advantage that people in the citizenship is enjoying in that community is a free visa movement for private citizens across the borders. That is, you can move from Uganda to Kenya without a visa.
With your ID.
You just need to have an identity.
Yes.
But the question of the economy, the question of the politics, I think those still remain more of a myth. It has been a concept of discussion, I think, since the formation of the ESC, at least the first three original members, Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania.
But you're not talking about security.
Security, not as deep yet. Maybe with the coming in of Congo, such discussions can also start coming into play at the end of the day. So I think, to respond to your question, I think the concept of ESC has not been actualized.
Yes.
Except you look at a micro level, where let's say a trader at Busia, Uganda side, can cross to Busia, Kenya side, informally, okay? And maybe sells their product at a higher rate on the other end without being taxed.
Yes.
So I think...
So does that explain why, for example, the issue of fuel prices, Kenya will deal with it in its own way, and Uganda also will deal with it in its own way?
Yes, but you see, the question is, if let's say for the past 10 years or so, Uganda's fuel prices have been relatively stable, okay? Or the question, let me not say stable, but the question is, has Kenya, because if you're saying that the double taxation affects the oil prices in Uganda, okay, from Mombasa, you say maybe when it comes through across the Ugandan border, has the Kenyan government actually, has the Mombasa port actually increased on its taxes towards the oil coming to Uganda? If no, then why? So then you cannot justify the increase in oil prices in Uganda from the concept of mobility by road from Mombasa. But also the other question is, in regard to the same concept, is the question: are we going to leave the most critical component of our economy into the hands of private investors entirely? The question of oil, the question of education, the question of health. If we realize that actually, yes, as a government, because we think we are liberal, are we going to entirely
liberalize the economy?
Liberalize? Or are we going to say, okay, oil is a very important component of our livelihoods. Maybe we should nationalize oil and say, since the private sector is overly exploiting the population, let the government take full charge of oil. I asked Nimrod,
yes,
does the country have oil reserves to cushion its population?
Definitely in any country have. The issue is our oil reserves enough or not, but we have oil reserves.
Comrades.
But the question is,
Are
they sufficient to sustain?
So who is to respond to that question? Is it government or the private sector in regards to protection of the consumer?
Yes, definitely government.
I think let's begin with that question after this short commercial break. And to our viewers, thank you very much. We hope you are enjoying our conversation. If you have any comments, please put that comment on the comment section. If you agree with any of our panelists, please let us know on the comment section. But also, if you disagree, please give us your alternative opinion on the comment section. But otherwise, see you shortly after this commercial break. Bye-bye. Yes, to our viewers, thank you very much for staying with us, and we hope that you are enjoying our conversations. Like I told you, please go ahead, put your comments on the comment section. Let us know what you think. But as of now, we shall dive straight into really concluding the first phase of our conversation, which is around the high prices of commodities in Uganda. And I'll just pick, comrades, your minds regarding how best can we move forward. Do you think that this whole issue of the Russia-Ukraine crisis is just a mere excuse, and therefore we must deal with these issues decisively and not shift blame to other maybe factors that are external, but also the issue around internal factors? Because I think we should focus on the factors that we have control over, which are the internal factors. The external, we might not have so much control over, but the internal factors, we must be able to deal with them and, you know, put sustainable solutions towards them. So, Gerald, you were making a point before the break.
Yes.
I'll give you a minute to make that point, but also then I'll ask you to maybe offer your own guidance that how best can the country move forward. Because I feel my heart goes out to the ordinary Ugandan who is out there and has no idea about, you know, fiscal policy, has no idea about the role of parliament, and all they care about is now the soap I was buying has now increased. You know, and to me, those are the Ugandans that my heart goes out to. And if there are any solutions that we must, you know, propose, then it should be towards addressing the plight of these ordinary Ugandans.
Yes. Yeah. I think shortly before the break, I asked a question that does Uganda have sufficient oil reserves? That's one. Two, the explanations that the government gives, even from the permanent secretary, Minister of Finance, Dr. Ramadan Ngozi, it seems to suggest that the government is powerless, you know, to regulate these prices. In other words, the government has lost its powers over protecting the citizen and also consumer protection. Now, if we are saying that the private sector is liberal, and we have given a case example of how our neighbor is handling the situation, that yes, you're free to trade as you wish, but also as a government, you're supposed to protect the citizen and the consumer. Do we then not say that government, it's the responsibility of the government to ensure that, okay, since the private sector is unable to maintain or contain the oil costs and then also the pressure, as they say, from the Ukraine-Russia war, then why don't we take full charge of the oil actually production, actually the oil sale sector? I mean, it's not news that Uganda, Nimrod keeps mentioning that we are not alive to what happens post-independence. But you see, we have had a post-independent governments that have actually nationalized critical sectors of the economy and successfully actually protected the population. As of today, we have the oil reserves since the Amin era. Many of them are still in existence. They have not increased in number. They are as they are. So the question is it a question of setting up priorities, right? Is it a question, therefore, of maybe the individuals within the government that benefit from this chaos, I should say? Or actually, are there individuals who are deliberately trying to undermine government, okay, and government's capacity actually to protect the consumer at the end of the day? So I think the solution thereof is actually government being very, very, very specific and showing the population that actually we have your best interest at heart. You who is selling matoke for 500 and you who is buying the matoke at 1,000, we are protecting both the two of you because our economy is largely agricultural. So we must therefore protect the mechanism of transporting these products from the farm to the market, and that is regulating oil prices. I think that is it. It goes back to government.
Yeah, but you see, Gerald, my concern is that whereas we can cushion all this blame to government, I think also it's not fair for us to entirely perceive that government must take full control over, over the economy rather, because it is true that I think between the 1980s and 1990s, Ugandans clamored to take part in the economy, because at the time there was too much nationalization of so many sectors, and Ugandans clamored to be involved in the economy. So isn't it a means of saying that you cannot make your bed and lay on it?
I'll just give a case example of our neighbors. Tanzania, it's a socialist economy. Okay, government owns most of the assets. Just recently, IMF actually classified it as a middle-income economy. Okay. So I think it's important to strike a balance between the liberal, okay, and the communist, the capitalist and the communist. Okay. What component of our economy is so critical that you cannot leave it at the hands of private players? Agriculture is one of them. Okay, because your existence as a government is as a result of the subsistence of the one, let's say Joyce down there who's growing 1 acre of coffee or half an acre of beans. Okay. So I think
you see the challenge is that you don't have to get a government into the business of profit making, because and I think that's where governments try to limit their involvement.
So then government
government has a social contract responsibility with its people.
So Moses, so
if you push it towards making profit,
so then the question is, how much profit can you make? That's just a question.
As a government or as a private player?
As a private player.
Yes.
So government must be able to be very clear on that. That beyond this margin, the population is suffocating. Therefore, you cannot make beyond this particular percentage of profit.
That's where price ceilings come in.
Exactly.
And regulations.
And that still goes back to government.
Okay, fair enough.
Thank you.
Siyema, let's hear your own opinion. How best can the country move forward from, how best can we address these prices and,
Yeah, thank you. I won't differ much from my comrade that the government should look at immediate things that it can deal with. First, let the East African integration be more of help at such a point. Let us not just look at the free movement, but let us also have the economic talks between these countries. And also for the setting price ceiling, it is entirely government to do this. to protect the consumers. Recently, the last parliamentary session, one Honorable David Bahati talked about they're going to the government is tracking the consumer protection law.
Mm.
So I hope this goes on well. I think it will be a very good start to protect the consumers against exploitation, because you know the wananchi do not understand that these things we are talking about, the price ceiling and anything that we are talking about here, formal things. No, for them they will keep on complaining, government tuyambe, you know, all the time. But the government needs to come out and show that it is protecting them in one way or the other.
Yeah.
One, informing them. How one of the big people, one time when country people are talking about hiking prices, came out and said, I have no words now. The person was addressing us and then said, no, I'm short of words. What do you expect the wananchi to think? Maybe it is a deal within the government. That would be a person's thinking. But then let the government come out and protect the consumers, the citizens.
Yeah. Okay.
So, thank you.
Nimrod,
Thank you.
you've been on the receiving end for most of this conversation.
Yes,
what way forward do you propose?
Being a son of a peasant and coming from very rural area, I definitely understand what's happening there. When my mother calls me and is like, I need soap, it is expensive, I feel the pain and my heart bleeds for the people of this country. I mean, we want wananchi, with the wananchi. Trust me, it is a very painful situation around the country. And to me, I'll even take this opportunity to talk to the president. Kindly let him intervene in this. I'm sure there's capacity. I believe that there's different enemies of the economy who are just taking chances to hold commodities, to increase these prices. At the end of the day, the people of Uganda are going through a lot. The Parliament of Uganda, the Trade Committee, should come alive to these factors. Let them give us exact reason why these prices are increasing. If there are these enemies that are increasing or holding oils in this country, why would we still entertain them here? We have seen that Kenya has deported CEOs that are owning these companies. It can happen here.
So you want to take the Amin approach?
I'm not buying Amin approach.
Okay, Kenya.
I'm not buying to Amin. But as another Ugandan here we are speaking facts.
Yes.
As another Ugandan, no, we are not going to that laughable system. There should be a system. There should be a balance that as Ugandans who love this country, that we have nowhere else to go. It's this country that we should belong to. Let the parliament, let all the actors of the economy rise to the alive that Ugandans are suffering. If it means putting the price ceilings and we survive as a country, let it happen. If it means government intervening, president intervening these matters so that our commodities are able, or our Ugandans are able to purchase these commodities. So I believe, one, the parliament should give a report to Ugandans why these prices are increasing. So maybe it shapes the discussion much better. Two, I believe that investors who are taking advantage of the economic crisis should be dealt with. Lastly, as Ugandans, we should also brace ourselves that some of these issues may not be, the answers may not be there now. We should brace ourselves to the fact that the economy was destroyed by COVID-19, and we should understand to a certain extent that along the way, we shall get back to normal. I believe in that.
Well, you're speaking with so much hope, and yes. I love that. Joyce, just as give us your final words. Just my concern, lastly, to you is that aren't you asking for too much from the private sector? Because the private sector, once they establish the company, they're entirely profit motivated. Okay, so for us to imagine that they care about the wananchi and how the wananchi is paying high prices, I think it's a fallacy. All they care about as a private sector is how much profit can they make. So aren't you asking too much of the private sector to consider the plight of these ordinary Ugandans, and therefore they should maybe regulate or reduce their prices. And also government seems to say, you know, we don't have so much to do. Just as you give us your last words, just make a comment regarding that.
Yes, thank you very much. I'll start from the question. As an activist, I have so much believed in a social welfare state, and I have believed in government regulation. Initially, you used the word control, which I felt when you use control, it sounds a little bit too hard.
Yeah.
Authoritarian.
And, yeah.
Authoritarian.
The best word I would use here is government regulation.
Regulation.
Why? Because we consider the consumer, who is the ordinary citizen, as well as we consider the people who are producing the goods and services to the consumer. Because one person cannot survive without the other.
Yeah.
And if you give the one with the highest power here is the person who is producing the goods and services. So if you let them have all the power, they are going to exploit the consumer. And at the end of the day, you're not going to, your citizens will suffer at the hands of that producer. So we can only ask much from the private sector by regulating, but not by sitting back and thinking they're just going to think overnight and have that heart and go ahead and charge a fair price.
Yeah.
We've seen even in ordinary circumstances, you go to a shop and depending on how you're dressed, you could pay $10 for a product that is $1.
Yeah.
Then another person comes and they are given the same product at a lower price. Yeah. So there is a lot that the private business person does in regards to exploiting the consumer, and we just cannot give them all the power to do that without government regulation. So that is how much government regulation is important in pricing. However, when I come to the things that maybe a country should do in regards to the skyrocketing prices, is as things stand, our government is not prepared to do anything. The Prime Minister told the people in the village where she visited that they should use pawpaw leaves.
But there's not true. It's not true. She never said that. I don't want Uganda. And as a young leader, I should be very, very honest. That's
as an
not
alternative
true.
to
She have never said
because
that.
they used
Who said that?
She gave an example of how they used to use
purple
leaves.
She has never said that statement.
When time was hard and
so she cited it.
Was difficult. Okay.
Ugandans.
The Ministry of Finance has listed a lot of maybe another Vision 2030 plans in his feedback, meaning they do not have an immediate alternative to mitigate the current situation. So the first thing that we need to do as a country is to put government to task. Because the moment we don't talk, at a personal level, they don't have what to do. They are at that point of inertia. They are resigned. They don't know how to go about the situation. So the only person who can motivate them to think hard, to actually, instead of asking us, can we get an alternative route? The only way they can get that alternative route is if we task them to get an alternative means of transport to make sure that the cost of fuel is low. Yeah. So the first thing we need to do as a country is put government to task to make sure
bottom-up approach.
To make sure that every day we are asking them to do something about the skyrocketing prices. Yeah. My colleagues have talked about price ceiling.
As you conclude?
We conclude, which is also important. We have import duties, and we are just going into a new phase of budgeting. According to the brief that I have seen, there is actually a lot of increase in taxes on almost every commodity. So I think this is the time for government to think hard and subsidize those taxes, subsidize the import duty, and then set price ceiling. Because when you task the private sector to reduce prices without subsidizing that cost of production, you're simply chasing them out of service. We've had so many investors run out of this country, and there's a lot that pushes them out. The economy just becomes difficult for them to continue because there is too much taxes. We had AfriCell closing just a few months ago, We've had supermarkets closing and going. Why? Because they're also not protected. And this also drives toward the corruption that we have in the country. That an investor comes to invest and provide services to the country, but every person in government wants commission from that investor. They want commission, they want money for campaigns.
Are you sure?
They are taxing, yes. They are taxing, because I am talking from an informed point of view. I know of several people who have failed. Because all that piles into the price that they are going to charge the consumer.
Well, in the legal profession, we say that he who alleges must prove.
Yeah.
So for now, all we can say is those are mere allegations.
But these are reality.
And they are not proven.
They are not allegations. I can give
unless you can bring
I can give
for
one
us,
example.
substantive evidence
I can give one
showing
example.
that maybe a given government official A, received a bribe from a given investor B, then we can take them as mere
It's not
hearsay.
necessarily for the NRM. Even the opposition receives funding from business people. But the extent to which the individuals...
You see, it is different, because if it is a government official receiving this funding, then it comes at the expense of social services.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Opposition, you are not in power, so you can receive as many bribes as you want, because those bribes don't influence or impact the social services being delivered to the ordinary Ugandan. But in terms of a government official, it affects
you know for sure, and it is public knowledge, that the previous Foreign Affairs Minister, Sam Kutesa, was bribed by an investor, okay?
Yes.
You know for sure that when the COVID-19 pandemic came, we announced and insisted that, no, Airtel, you have given me this money, but I want 4x4. And 3 months later, all these so-called investors who had given government donations during COVID-19 were now asking government for relief, okay? A relief fund to help them boost their production, okay? So at the end of the day, all that they are giving to government is coming back to us, the consumers, who are already paying tax. And that is why we have to be concerned that MTN, yes, you're giving government money, but aren't you going to ask me for that money tomorrow? Yeah, instead of me sitting here and
there is something called corporate social responsibility.
Yeah, corporate social responsibility is different from donating money to individuals in government, donating,
but you see, the money was
bribing the
given
Foreign
for a
Affairs
public
Minister,
good.
Out of will or out of coercion?
No. I don't think there was a gun that
Moses,
was placed on the head of this
just
person.
back on that.
Yeah?
The reason as to why even the donor community is now deciding to deal directly with the private citizen in regards to offering services to the population is because it's to cut that red tape of money having to trickle down through bribes, kickbacks, and all that. And so what she's trying to say here is that if MTN is giving to the community, it's different from the component where MTN has to give money to government with the anticipation that maybe getting something back within the short run. Yes. So I think that's where CSR now differs from that.
Yeah, sure. And I hear you guys.
Yes.
And I think, if there's anything that we have to deal with in this country, then I think corruption, we must deal away with it.
Yeah,
because
I conclude, I brought that up because just like we want consumers to be protected, traders also need to be protected from such entities in government. That you want a service from Ministry of Finance, and you have to bribe somebody in that ministry in order for you to get the document, in order for you to get the certificate of operation. You have to go and bribe someone at maybe Uganda Investment Authority to get through. Then at the end of the day, you start charging the consumer that money because you want to recover. So we need to also re-echo that, because if it doesn't, we shall have investors going out. And then investing in agriculture. Most of the products that we are crying about, Ukraine, Russia, are agricultural products. We have the land. We need to invest in agriculture. We need to go and create dams, because there is drought. We are in April, and our seasons have not even started in the country. But no one in government is talking about that. People are in offices signing documents to create opportunities for agriculture when the actual agriculture is at a standstill waiting for the rains. So we need to have a deliberate investment towards agriculture to enable the ordinary person boost their production, because then it will not only give us the products that have been affected by the Ukraine war and COVID-19, but it will also boost the income of the ordinary citizen.
But Kakai will tell you that they've actually invested through NADS, through Operation Wealth Creation,
there is no dam. There is no dam
government has tried to invest in
Where do you
in
come
my
from?
village. I come from Tororo.
Ah, that's not true.
There's in 2016, government gave a promise to this country that they are going to create irrigation dams in every sub-county in the country. Okay? A year later, I think in 2017, Parliament passed the money that was supposed to create those dams. To this date, there is no district or even parish, or even a sub-county that you can go and point that now in this area, the other sub-county has a dam, the other sub-county has a dam. And our production has been affected severely by drought. Last year, there was almost no season. This year, the seasons have not started, and we are almost halfway.
Yeah, fair enough.
So the investment in agriculture should not be a PR investment. It should be real investment.
Okay, fair enough, colleagues. Our time is fast spent, but let's just spare some 15 minutes to talk about the coffee deal that Uganda just signed with the Uganda Vinci Coffee Company Limited. And to me, comrades, what stands out as a clause in this agreement, and I'll just read it out for our viewers, is that clause B, which says that as part of its objective of building an independent, integrated, and self-sustaining national economy, and in a bid to facilitate ventures that process Ugandan coffee into roasting and instant coffee for the local market and export, the government of Uganda signed a project implementation agreement with the company in respect of this project. So, and to me, the key words here is that building an independent, integrated, and self-sustaining national economy. To me, it is somewhat disturbing that whereas we want to build a national and self-sustaining economy, we are doing so not by empowering the indigenous investor or the indigenous producer of coffee, but rather by giving this mandate to a foreign investor. To me, that is very disturbing. That the actions contravene directly with this clause. Independent, self-sustaining national economy. National economy is the key word for me, not international economy. So, Gerald, let me just kick it off from you. What do you make of this coffee deal, and what is there for Ugandans?
Well, I'll keep the discussions as in line with that. They were saying our female mafia, woman mafia. Now, you see, that's why I say, probably there are people who are deliberately trying to undermine government, or strategically or tactfully try to do things that bring down the government. In its context, internally there are people who just don't wish well for the government in itself. Because
people who are within the government?
Within the government itself.
But don't wish well for the government?
Yes. You know how the state operates.
Statecraft.
Statecraft and all that. So I think it's a question of trying to privatize an agricultural sector of the agricultural economy. It's also undermining. In fact, the government saying this deal is undermining itself, its capacity, actually, with all these projects I've set up, Operation Wealth Creation, Bonaba Gagawale, because that was to try to empower the market economy, the agricultural economy. Okay? Now, you have the Uganda Coffee Development Authority. I want to assume that it's fully functional. And the clause indicated in the terms of these signatories all indicate to the functions of UCDA. Okay, so what the agreement is doing is actually privatizing the coffee industry in Uganda without having put it out there directly to the population. And we have seen what happens when the economy is. Yes, we have success stories, but I think the failure stories are largely what we go by. We have the Uganda Commercial Bank, the Greenland Bank, all privatized at the time. We have, we have even our cooperatives at local levels, farmer cooperatives have been run down. So what I see here is that yes, in good spirit, it's good to bring in investors who have to compete actually with the market, because I mean a private farmer and a grower of coffee deep down in Liantonde would want to have competition of prices. But then you have this agreement dictating how much the farmer has to sell their coffee, where they should grow it, in what quantities, and shockingly, the foreign investor is given a tax holiday, while the local farmer or the local producer or the local trader of coffee, because we have people who actually process this coffee instantly in Uganda, okay, they're not given any such forms of tax. Someone's coffee shop is taxed like any other business. So what the government is trying to do is that actually we are taking away the rights of the local producer, okay? Which rights are already, the local producer or the farmer already feels they don't have the space to expand their coffee, their farms and all that. But also, the key stakeholders in all this coffee business, all the signatories, I would want to definitely agree with the CP Mayiga, the Prime Minister of Uganda, okay? Because Uganda as a kingdom itself has been deliberate on such catch crops, encouraging its farmers to also agriculture also comes with encouraging your people to trade in something. So what happens therefore that and then government individuals, sectors within the government are coming out to refute their involvement, okay, in the signatory. Ministry of Agriculture, in fact, I think it's the mother ministry in all this, supposed to be the mother ministry in providing these concessions, what kind of deals to sign and all that. So I think it becomes problematic when now we are trying to do PR for something which has gone wrong. It affects the population entirely, whether you're yellow, you're green, you're blue.
The body politic.
The body politic of the country. And the question is, isn't there a local investor? And I think we are beginning to, Uganda is beginning to have its own concept of where an investor is. Because I think recently, the investor is someone whom the government lends money so that they can do something.
But not bring in
new money and produce something. So I think there's something wrong. There's something going on wrong. Yeah. And I think the more we ignore it, the more we keep plunging down as a population. Yeah. And I think we have to first clearly define who an investor is before going into the coffee agreement. Yeah. Okay? Then there we shall have the clear direction into what we are trying to discuss.
Yeah. Sure. Nimrod,
yes.
Just to pick it up from the question that he asked, there is something going wrong.
Yes.
What do you think?
Thank you. When we talk about the coffee deal, I've heard a lot of political sentiments against the coffee deal. One thing I would want us to shape this conversation is discuss the facts of the coffee deal, but still, in what faith is the coffee deal? Is it in good faith or in bad faith? I'm sure entirely we all agree that we need to take over our economy from a subsistence economy to a monetary economy. It means we should transform our farmers just from, hand-to-mouth production to make money from what they do.
To commercial.
To commercial. So I believe this whole deal is in good faith to transform and add on what we have today.
On paper.
Now, getting back to real facts of the coffee deal. Yes. I don't want to discuss who is the investor, regardless of the investor who's coming to bring 80 million and invest in this country. Okay? Regardless of who is the what? The investor.
Anyway,
Now, the issue is what are they doing?
Yes.
In a country whereby there are $40 million on market, and Uganda is only getting $4 million per year. And we are the third biggest exports of coffee in Africa. 2, the whole deal is saying that Uganda, this whole investor, Vinci, is only taking around 6.4% of the total produce of coffee beans. Only what? 6.4. Only 6.4. Let it be clear that there are people who are saying they're monopolizing the whole thing, but they're taking only 6.4 out of the 7 million bags of beans that are produced per year in Uganda here. They're only taking around 6.4. What are they doing? To me, what they're doing is what's supposed to be done in such an economy. in Uganda today, we believe there's these 17 companies, like my comrade was saying, that could the government choose one of the 17 companies that roast coffee here. But the issue is they have the capacity.
Then there you empower them. You give
now, when we are going to empower them, we have seen this. I'll give an example of roads in Uganda today. When our friends are complaining that why is Chinese taking over roads, can't we have engineers here to do what? They have been tried here. And we have seen the delay that happens. Now, coming to this investment.
But that's not exclusive of the corruption syndicates.
Coming back to this investment of coffee deal.
Expect kickbacks.
I believe the Kaushengas of this country, they are doing something to promote the coffee. But even you read the article that you just read, their issue is to make sure they produce fine coffee for final consumption and also for exports and the domestic consumption. In this country today, the coffee we take, I come from Elgon. The Elgon coffee that's packed, it cannot be exported anywhere for consumption.
You agree that there's coffee from Uganda that is being exported to the UK supermarkets, to the US supermarkets? Fine coffee, instant coffee.
I don't agree.
Very nice. You don't?
That's our coffee.
I think
that is exported for final consumption.
Yes, I think, Comrade Nimrod, you need to speak from facts.
Yes, that is
at
facts.
least from an informed point of view.
Yes.
I have a colleague who has ever exported Elgon coffee. Actually, not coffee from Uganda. Elgon coffee, and, processed, roasted and grounded
by Bugisu Cooperative Union.
By Bugisu Cooperative Union to the United
Kingdom. Now let me they exported that coffee, true, but don't export it for final consumption.
But
it
was consumed.
I don't know what happens.
What do you mean by
why we get less from the world market?
What do you mean by final consumption?
Now you see what happens here is let's now agree today. The reason why Uganda still gets a small share, and we are the biggest exports of coffee, and we get the final share of the money as a country, is because our coffee, after us exporting it, there's another processing of the coffee.
What processing?
The coffee we export today, actually, when it reaches outside there, they process it until again I don't know the scientific word I can use, but they process it again and again for it to reach the standards of those countries.
Okay.
In terms of and in Uganda today,
I think for information purposes.
Let me conclude.
Just for information purposes, Nimrod. No, because you're misleading. No, you're misleading the viewers.
I'm not misleading.
You're misleading the viewers. Just for information purposes. Coffee comes from the beans that is not yet threshed. No, when it is still fresh.
Okay.
The share is that is still fresh. Okay. Then the first processing is actually to remove the sherry shells and unshell it and dry, which has been ongoing from Uganda, okay? Then when it is dry, the consumer has decision on what they actually want. And many coffee takers actually prefer the clean coffee beans. Why? So that because when you roast coffee, it has a short lifespan. Within, I think, 24 days, the taste becomes different. So they prefer the coffee beans that whenever they are going to make their own coffee, they roast and ground for their own consumption. So it is a preference, okay? It is a preference by the majority coffee takers, okay? That they prefer to have it processed, that last phase, on their own. However, there are those who do not have coffee processing machines, the portable ones, that take the already grinded coffee. Now, we have been exporting both types of coffee. The coffee beans, the grinded, the raw one, the grinded coffee beans, and then the roasted and not grinded coffee beans, depending on who wants the beans.
Okay, now let me just
let me give Nimrod. Nimrod, you have 1 minute.
Okay, thank you. Let me just give now.
That.
Okay, let me just give a clear view that Kaushenga himself, who's in this, who has actually a company that roasts coffee.
Who is part of the regime?
No, it's not about being what he goes through. He says after them roasting coffee here, what one of the biggest challenge they face in terms of exporting is packaging. He said that the moment you finish the coffee roasting, you take it to Mombasa. That delay is there. But the moment this coffee reaches on the world market, it has lost the taste and the smell because of the time it spent. It's actually for me believe that the government should invest more in helping them in packaging to the standard that they can still export this coffee.
And not in roasting.
No, even though they roast it here, but they can be able to keep the standard that even though it spends time in transit,
Yeah.
it can still keep the same standard. The challenge Uganda is facing on the world market is not the coffee they are taking there, is that they take their coffee, but by the time it reaches on the world market,
It has lost
it has
value.
lost value. It has lost,
So
so
why-
it is processed again.
So why not invest in the one
No.
Robert Kabushenga rather than investing in the one Vinci?
Because
Kabushenga has the knowledge on what must be done. What he needs is the
But
money to do
they
it.
are unable to do it. So they need
Yes,
to be
yes,
empowered.
the whole
to
idea
be-
is, can we empower this local company? I can agree in another way. But here we are discussing that Venture showed interest. Showed interest that she can do it much better.
But then where is the concern of
Why not-
the
why
government
not-
for
why
its
not-
people?
Why not?
So does it mean
Why
that
not-
any-
why not
Is it
this
a call?
cooperative
Is it-
union?
The concern
Is it not
is,
first come,
the
first serve?
concern is,
That's
no,
because
no,
you
no,
show
not
interest
first come.
first.
The concern is
Therefore,
clear.
now, by all
The government
means,
has not monopolized it. It is even now saying that even though other 17 companies are ready to also go ahead,
They
the
can also
government
be
is
get-
free to come. They are free to come to
Have you
government.
addressed your mind
and
to the
get.
clauses in that agreement?
Yes, I've tried to address very well. I've read it over and over. The government is saying, even though you are here and you also feel like you can do much in coffee, come and talk to us. This lady, she came and talked to us. And we're just saying, like another investor, we believe we should get more from coffee. And that's what you're saying, that our target is to make sure that by 2023, Uganda is producing 20 million
But
bags of beans.
my-
We are
just-
only
just-
producing
so my
total.
question-
How can we empower farmers?
Yeah, my question is, which way is appropriate? Should it be that the people look out for government,
Or government looks out
or
for
government
people?
should be able to identify its local producers and say, no, I think you're doing well here.
No,
Come and
being-
boost
being-
you."
being-
It has
Okay.
always empowered
Now,
them right from planting.
Nimrod,
Yes.
Nimrod.
Now, being an
Nimrod,
liberalized
a case-
economy,
a case
it is
example.
They
open.
should
Any investor who is
Nimrod,
looking at an
yes.
opportunity
Yeah,
in the economy,
sure.
Nimrod,
comes
yes.
I
out.
think I agree with that.
Yes,
You know,
it's
either way
it's
can
Nimrod,
work.
it
Nimrod, two
works.
issues.
There's no strategy
Two
in that.
issues.
Yeah.
One, you have Bugisu,
Yes,
Cooperative
cooperative union.
Yes, my own
It has
union.
forever,
Yes,
it has shown
Yeah,
that
interest.
actually
You have
interest,
interest
and also
in
also shown that it can produce if
Yes,
given the
and they are
capacity.
Now, when we talk
And they're
about
producing.
Bugisu,
No, that's one. Two,
Yeah.
the biggest problem with that agreement
Yes.
is actually it is government investing in the so-called investor.
Yes.
You should read the clauses. So
I would want to know
that's
that.
why
I've
the
not
problem
seen
comes
that
in, by
in-
the way.
Yes,
I've
they're
not
giving-
seen that
No,
the
it is
government is
there.
investing in an
They are
investor.
giving the investor
Government is
land,
giving
tax
them
holiday for 10
These are
years.
investment acts that are given to an
They are
investor.
giving them money.
No, they
Yes,
are given
okay.
to an investor.
Okay,
But these
okay.
acts are
Nimrod,
not
Nimrod,
bound to
please,
one.
I request that you use only 30 seconds to
Yes.
make
Conclude.
your
Now,
final
for
point.
me to conclude on the coffee
Yeah.
deal,
30
as a
seconds.
young Ugandan on this space today, I believe what the government should do is to encourage young people to go and also be part of this in a form of empowering them in terms of planting coffee, managing the coffee plantations, and also make sure that we produce coffee that is at a standard and well screened. When I go back to my village there, I know that Bugisu cooperative union that we talk about, it's going through a lot because the farmers give them coffee that is, one, the way they manage it in terms of harvesting, and to the extent that by the time they collect the coffee, they also go through a lot so that they can have 18 screen point of coffee that is exported. A lot of coffee that we get, around 50% is exported, the rest is not.
Okay, fair enough.
So I believe as a government,
why not
fair enough.
mechanize
No,
their
fair enough.
processes?
Joyce, because you did interrupt Nimrod earlier on and you,
Yeah, she took
you,
a lot of
you
my
used
minutes,
some 2 minutes, I believe that you made your point, so I'll give you only 2 minutes.
No, 2
Yeah.
minutes is solid.
I'll give you
Anyway,
2
thank
minutes.
you very much. Well, for me, for starters, I think one of the biggest challenge we have in this country is that we have people in positions of responsibility who want to run the country like a certain small kiosk in the village. That you have a bill that is, you're signing an agreement to serve the whole country, and you're doing it in the corridors. The Minister of Finance went into the signing of the agreement with the so-called investor, and I think the Attorney General's office. The agreement is to boost agriculture.
True.
The Minister of Agriculture is not consulted, distances himself from it. The coffee farmers are not consulted. They don't know what is going on. The coffee trade unions do not know what is going on. The cooperatives do not know what is going on. Government that does not even have an acre of coffee is now the in charge. of the whole thing without consultation. And that is why most of our policies, even when, however good they are, fail.
But
because
just
that is the first point of failure.
Hypothetically asking,
yes,
that if government was to consult each and every stakeholder before, for example, putting this road that we all used coming here, do you think this road would ever be put in place?
Yes, it would.
But
because
after how long?
It would, because people need road. No, just
because now
to respond to that,
the issue of effectiveness.
When government is constructing a road, where the road is going to pass,
there are people who are there.
Ask the owners of the land. They will ask how much to be compensated. They'll have those discussions.
Yes.
But sometimes even just to inform them that this is going to happen. So I think stakeholders actually are involved.
So
the issue isn't consulting you, but just informing you that the road will pass here. How much do you need? Clear off your road, you want to pass here.
For your own information.
Do they consult them?
Yes.
They do actually.
They inform.
They do, and it is legal.
They
do, and it is legal.
That is why you see the issue in Ipiji of the guy who owned a tree. You get?
But still was compensated.
But
after the tree was uprooted.
Moses,
no, because you see,
Moses,
there's something called common good.
There's
something called common good, that the role of a state and a government is to cater for the common good of all citizens, right? And if that common good comes at the expense of even not consulting you at times, then so be it.
Yes.
Because if we
only with security.
If we consult you on everything, then when
shall
we work?
Just for your own information.
When shall we work?
Just for your own information, it is constitutional that before government constructing a road, it engages the community and landowners.
Constitution.
It is
What part of the
constitution?
What provision?
The land.
What provision?
The land and the compensation bill explains that, including procedures. What do you do first? You first consult the landowners, because government does not own the land. Okay, so they don't just come to them and tell you, Kidega, you know what? This is your house. Okay, tomorrow we are constructing a road here. Or next month, please find where to go. They don't just inform you. They engage you into a dialogue. Okay.
Compensation.
They engage you into, and it has worked. That is why we have
that a road will pass.
It doesn't change.
But
the fact is,
the road will still pass there.
The road finally passes there. But if it wasn't working, we wouldn't be having roads. Okay. So similarly, what does it? Any policy that is coming into the country has to be consultative, depending on what interests you're serving.
So, Joyce,
if you're going to just
a little bit similarly to this, the signing is done.
Yes.
So the informing part is coming in.
No, it does not happen like that.
Yeah. Whatever is going to be done does not change the fact that the contract is there already and it is signed.
The contract signing process, the way you bring the policy affects its implementation and success.
Yeah.
In normal practice, in professional practice, in a democratic practice, you first engage before taking the final decision. You don't first decide and then you start coercing.
No,
that happens in the and it affects the success of that policy.
Who brought the aspect of the legal framework and legal regime. And I'll tell you that the minister has the legal backing that they can commit the country into a contract.
Yes.
Okay, the law shields them.
Yes.
Well,
so if you want to speak about who abused or who didn't abuse the law, then the minister actually had the mandate to do what he did. Legally protected.
I think you're wrong.
No, we are saying the Minister of Finance.
They have capacity. The law shields them to do that.
The Minister of Finance.
So who is the major stakeholder in this? Is it the
investment?
I think
the minister can take it on after that. Yes.
But I know all agreements should be cleared by the Attorney General.
No, but you guys are all blowing the whole thing out of proportion. You're looking at the law, setting the law, okay? Just like during the age limit, it is the mandate of the Parliament and the executive to amend the law and sign it, okay? Why did they consult people? Why did they go into a consultation process?
That's a procedure matter.
No,
exactly. So I am talking about procedure. I am talking about who has the powers.
But
at the end of the day, what I'm saying is, if you go ahead and just pass your policies without engaging the relevant stakeholders, it fails. And your interest is not to have a policy. Your interest is actually to implement it, okay? But if we just want to have it on paper, then it is good enough. It is on paper, right? But where are they going to get the coffee? The coffee is supposed to come from Bugisu Cooperative Union, which wants to sue the government. The coffee is going to come from Buganda, which is writing against the agreement. The coffee is going to come from the ordinary farmers. So at the end of the day, you have the agreement, you don't have the coffee. So you needed to bring, you needed to first understand, because when you engage the stakeholders, you even understand their problem. Maybe their problem is actually not the processing, it is not what you're signing, okay? So what did you include their interest in the bill, in the policy that you signed? Because if they are not consulted, then their interest is not there. What this means is that when you finally go back to communicate to them, they are going to force you to amend, to sign it again, probably now, this time with another entity. And that is why the whole process was sham in the beginning. Secondly, like my comrade said,
and lastly,
said that it was a vote of no confidence to the Uganda Coffee Marketing Board. We have a coffee marketing board, okay? Its mandate is to regulate and also market.
That's clear.
It is to regulate and also market the coffee that is being produced in the country.
Yes.
So in normal practice, both. They coordinate.
There's UCDA and then marketing board. Both are government institutions.
They are both government institutions.
I want to move to Hajat.
Yeah, but let me conclude. They are both government institutions that are already mandated with the process of empowering farmers to produce coffee and then linking the local market to the external market. So in other words, it is the Uganda Coffee Development Board and the Marketing Board that is supposed to sign an agreement with with a third party to aid them in their work, not the Ministry of Finance.
Okay, fair enough. Hajat, this being your month of Ramadan, we shall give you the last words on the show. So.
Okay. Thank you. I think I pick up from where Joyce has stopped. To me, that deal is the deal was signed by, should I say, parties that are not supposed to act on behalf of the actual people that were supposed to take part in that deal, in the signing and negotiations of this whole deal. Because if you tell me that the marketing board is not in this deal, the marketing board and the Ministry of Agriculture is not involved. So who are the farmers, like she said? Who are those people that are going to provide the coffee? Or you're going to still do, like, you're going to go and still find the Bugishu people, you tell them to provide you with coffee, that it is in this contract, and then they don't know anything about the deal. Okay, like they're acting in a shadow. They'll go and plant, do everything, they give you the coffee, and then you maybe treat them in a way of like they don't have information about the entire contract, and then you're saying it was on behalf of, it is to benefit the farmers. So I think this deal, should it be revised? It should be revised. That's what I think. If at all the provision is there for it to be revised.
You see,
to include the stakeholders in this. Because like young people, I have friends that are dealing in coffee production already. They're also exporting. I think after the discussion, I'll show you one. Some little girl told me, I see myself 10 years from now exporting the best coffee. So you're barring as such a girl's dream.
Not at all.
You are.
Not at all.
You
okay,
are.
let's not open a new discussion.
Why don't we provide these tax holidays and all these exemptions we've given this company, this foreign company to in this deal? Why don't we empower our farmers with these small things? Okay.
But just a question: what makes a company foreign? Is it its membership? Because let's assume that, for example, the head of the company is maybe a foreigner, but the staff below are purely Ugandan.
It
So
becomes
what
a
makes the
multinational.
company? Yeah,
It
because
becomes
Actually, you don't employ 250,
because
46
actually
Ugandans.
the company
You're not
name
talking
is
about
Uganda
with no
Vinci.
minimum wage and
Because-
whatever.
because
But it is
the
our
company
jobs.
name is actually
We cannot
Uganda
small
Vinci
business make a
bank.
Coffee Limited. I don't know.
Leave alone the
This
name.
thing takes us back to what
The name
happened
doesn't change the
sometimes.
ownership.
Explore all that
And
really.
then they change the ownership. And I
Really?
think
Okay,
The
I
ownership
think
is
just
foreign.
one.
yeah, just
From
one
what
last
she's
word.
saying.
Yeah, just 1 second.
Even
Yeah.
when you're doing the wrong thing, find the right ways of doing it.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
So
Siyema,
my point
our
should
time
be
is fast
clear,
spent,
yes.
yeah.
Let us empower the local farmers of coffee with these small incentives that we are giving, with the small incentives that we are giving this company to enjoy.
Yeah. Okay.
That will be a better push in
fair,
our coffee development.
Fair enough.
Thank you.
Okay.
Just a second.
Just 1 second, please.
Thank you.
Yeah.
My humble appeal to the government, is let's revive cooperatives, farmers cooperative unions in every region, because Uganda was at that peak because of cooperatives. And if there are cooperatives, consultation will be very easier. Thank you so much. Thank you, round table.
Many thanks. Thank you, Comrade Gerald. Thank you, Comrade Siyema, Comrade Kakai, and Comrade Joyce. Many thanks for joining us on the Youth Roundtable. To our viewers, it's always amazing to have you each and every single week. Please, you've had the conversation. You have the right to make your comment on the comment section and let us know what you think about the coffee deal that Uganda just signed, but also about the high prices of commodities that we have been discussing today. From us to you, have a lovely Ramadan, have a lovely week, and see you next week, same time. Bye-bye.